The large conference room buzzed with quiet chatter as executives and managers settled into their seats, their eyes flickering toward the head of the long polished table where the company's director, Mr. Harold Whitman, prepared to begin the meeting. The air smelled of fresh brewed coffee, the scent weaving through the tension in the room. This wasn't just any meeting. It was a high-stakes discussion that would determine the future of the company, a major merger that could either propel them to new heights or sink them into chaos amid the crisp suits and sharp gazes of the attendees. One figure moved unnoticed. At first, Olivia Carter, the coffee attendant. She was young, no older than 24, with dark brown curls tucked neatly under her cap, and a calm, observant demeanor. She had been working in the company's cafeteria for nearly a year, blending into the background, refilling cups, and offering warm smiles. No one paid her much attention, not really. To them, she was just the girl who brought coffee. That was, until today. Mr. Whitman tapped his fingers against the table impatiently. "Where's my coffee?" His voice was deep, edged with the authority of a man who had spent decades climbing the corporate ladder. One of the senior assistants, a woman named Julia, quickly stood. "I'll get it for you, sir," she said, smoothing down her expensive blazer as she stepped away toward the door. Olivia, who had been standing quietly near the corner with the coffee tray, tensed for a second before taking a deep breath. She wasn't supposed to speak up during meetings. That was an unspoken rule. But something about the way Julia moved, the confidence of someone who didn't truly understand what she was about to do, made Olivia hesitate. Still, she knew she couldn't let it happen. "Excuse me," Olivia said, her voice clear but careful. The entire room turned to look at her. A coffee attendant speaking out. That was unexpected. Julia paused, raising an eyebrow as if confused. "Yes." Olivia swallowed but stood firm. I think it would be best if I brought Mr. Whitman's coffee." A murmur of curiosity rippled through the room. Some of the executives exchanged glances, amused, while others frowned, wondering why this girl would make such a request. Mr. Whitman himself narrowed his sharp blue eyes. "And why is that?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge of impatience. Olivia met his gaze, steady, despite the weight of all the attention. "Because you take it black. No sugar, no cream. But Julia doesn't know that. And if she brings it the wrong way, you'll send her back, which will waste more time." The room fell silent. Julia, caught off guard, let out a small embarrassed laugh. "Well, I could have just asked, but you didn't," Olivia said simply, her tone polite, not confrontational. Another silence stretched across the room. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Whitman leaned back in his chair and let out a short, amused chuckle. "Well," he said, nodding slightly. "She's not wrong." Julia hesitated for only a moment before stepping aside, allowing Olivia to walk past her toward the director's chair. Olivia picked up the small porcelain cup from her tray and placed it gently in front of Mr. Whitman. The rich, dark coffee inside was exactly as he liked it. For a moment, he studied the cup, then looked up at her. "You've been paying attention," he remarked. Olivia gave a small nod. "It's my job." Something in her tone, something quiet but certain, made a few people in the room sit up straighter. Mr. Whitman didn't say anything for a long moment, then lifted the cup to take a sip. The strong, bitter taste was exactly as he expected. He set the cup down and folded his hands together. "Interesting," he murmured. Then, as if nothing had happened, he turned his attention back to the meeting. The executives, sensing the moment had passed, shifted their focus as well. Papers rustled, pens clicked, and soon The discussion resumed, but Olivia could feel the weight of a few lingering gazes on her as she retreated back to her corner. As the meeting continued, Olivia stood quietly, her mind racing. She had done something she wasn't supposed to do, spoken up when no one had, asked for her opinion. Yet Mr. Whitman hadn't been angry. In fact, he had looked intrigued. But what Olivia didn't know, what no one in the room could have guessed, was that this small moment, this single correction, was about to change everything. Because as the meeting wrapped up and the executives began filing out of the room, Mr. Whitman's voice cut through the air once more. "Miss Carter." Olivia froze mid-step, heart pounding as she turned to face him. He was watching her with a look that was no longer just amusement. It was something deeper, something considering. "Stay back for a moment," he said. And just like that, the entire room felt different. Olivia's heart pounded as the last of the executives left the room, their murmurs fading down the hallway. She stood frozen near the door, unsure of what was about to happen. Mr. Whitman remained seated at the head of the table, fingers steepled as he regarded her with quiet interest. The room, which had been filled with voices and decisions just moments ago, now felt strangely intimate, too quiet. She had never been alone with him before. "Come here," he said, his voice calm but firm. Olivia took a hesitant step forward, feeling the weight of his gaze. She wasn't sure what he was thinking, but she could tell he wasn't angry. If anything, he seemed curious. "You work in the cafeteria, don't you?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Olivia replied. He nodded slowly, as if piecing something together. "And yet, you knew exactly how I take my coffee." She hesitated, but then decided to be honest. "I pay attention, not just to you, but to everyone. People's habits, their routines. It helps me do my job better." Mr. Whitman raised an eyebrow. "That's an unusual trait for someone in your position." Olivia shifted slightly. She wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a subtle way of reminding her where she stood in the company. "I didn't mean to interrupt the meeting," she said quickly, wanting to explain herself. I thought it would be more efficient." His lips curled slightly, the closest thing to a smile she had seen from him. "Efficiency, that's something we value here." There was a brief silence, but Olivia could tell he wasn't done speaking. He was studying her, as if seeing her for the first time. "How long have you worked here?" he finally asked. "Almost a year," she answered. "And what did you do before this?" She hesitated. That was a more complicated question. "A little of everything," she admitted. "A few retail jobs, some temp work, nothing permanent." "Why?" Olivia blinked, caught off guard. "Why what? Why nothing permanent?" She swallowed, debating how much she should say. "Because I don't come from a background where stability was easy," she finally said. "I had to move around a lot." Mr. Whitman nodded slightly, as if filing that information away. He was quiet for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. "You see things that others overlook," he mused. "That's not a common skill." Olivia wasn't sure what to say to that. Was this a compliment, a warning, an observation? Before she could figure it out, the door to the conference room swung open again, breaking the moment. Julia stepped in, looking between them with a polite but slightly puzzled expression. "Sir, your next meeting is in 10 minutes." Mr. Whitman glanced at the clock, then back at Olivia. "That will be all," he said, dismissing her. Olivia gave a small nod and turned to leave. But as she walked past Julia, she could feel the woman's sharp gaze on her. Julia said nothing, but Olivia could sense the question in her eyes. "Why were you still here?" As Olivia walked back down the hallway, her mind raced. What had just happened? Why had Mr. Whitman been so interested in her? He was a man who dealt with million-dollar decisions daily. Why did he care how a coffee attendant thought? Something about the encounter left her uneasy, and then, over the next few days, strange things started happening. The first sign was small, barely noticeable. Some of the executives, people who had previously ignored her, now seemed to watch her when she refilled their cups. It wasn't overt, but she felt it. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, she was approached by someone she had never spoken to before. Daniel Hughes, one of the company's senior analysts. He stopped her in the hallway, his expression unreadable. "You're Olivia, right?" She nodded cautiously. He hesitated for only a second before lowering his voice. "I'd be careful if I were you." Her stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" Daniel glanced around before speaking again. "I don't know what you did, but Mr. Whitman doesn't take interest in people without a reason. That could be a good thing or a bad thing." Olivia frowned. "I didn't do anything." Daniel sighed. "Then you should figure out why he noticed you. Because if someone like him is watching you, other people are too." With that, he walked away, leaving Olivia more unsettled than before. The tension only grew from there. Julia, who had once barely acknowledged her, now seemed cold, watching her from a distance. Other executives whispered when she passed. And then, 2 days later, something even more unexpected happened. Olivia was called to the executive floor. The invitation came through an email from Mr. Whitman's office. Short and direct. "Report to the 21st floor at 3 p.m. HW." Olivia stared at the message, feeling a knot form in her stomach. The 21st floor was reserved for the top executives, the kind of place where someone like her had no reason to be. She had no idea what was waiting for her up there. But one thing was clear. She wasn't invisible anymore, and she wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Olivia stood outside the glass doors of the 21st floor, her heart pounding. She had never set foot here before. The air smelled different, like polished wood and expensive cologne. Everything was sleek, quiet, intimidating. She swallowed hard and stepped inside. A receptionist glanced up and gave her a polite but curious look. "You're Olivia Carter." "Yes," she said, her voice steady, despite the nerves creeping up her spine. "Mr. Whitman is expecting you." The receptionist gestured toward a set of double doors at the end of the hall. Olivia walked forward, her footsteps barely making a sound on the plush carpet. The moment she reached for the door handle, she hesitated. Was she in trouble? Had she done something wrong? Only one way to find out. She pushed open the door. Inside, Mr. Whitman sat behind his massive desk, hands clasped together. He looked up when she entered, nodding slightly. Across from him sat Julia. Olivia tensed. Julia's expression was unreadable, but her presence made Olivia uneasy. "Sit down," Mr. Whitman said. Olivia obeyed, cautiously lowering herself into the chair across from him. "I assume you're wondering why you're here," he said. "Yes," Olivia admitted. He leaned forward, studying her with that same quiet intensity that had unsettled her before. "I've been watching you," he said, "not in a bad way. I make it my business to notice the people others overlook. And you, Olivia, you see things others don't. That's rare." Olivia wasn't sure what to say. Mr. Whitman continued, "This company is built on people who think ahead, who anticipate needs before they arise. You demonstrated that with something as small as a cup of coffee, but I suspect your talent goes far beyond that." Julia suddenly cleared her throat. "With all due respect, sir," she said, her voice measured. "She's a coffee attendant. She has no experience in corporate decision-making." Mr. Whitman didn't even glance at Julia. His eyes stayed on Olivia. "Experience can be gained. Instinct, that's something else." Olivia felt her breath catch. What was he saying? I want to offer you a position, he said simply. An entry-level role in operations, a chance to learn, to grow. I believe you have potential, and I don't like wasting talent. For a moment, Olivia just stared. She had spent so much of her life being overlooked, blending into the background. Now the most powerful man in the company was offering her a chance, something she had never even imagined. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Say yes, Mr. Whitman said. She glanced at Julia, who remained stiff and silent. She could tell the woman wasn't happy about this. Maybe others wouldn't be either. But for the first time in a long time, Olivia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Finally, she met Mr. Whitman's gaze and nodded. Okay. Yes. A small, satisfied smile crossed his lips. Good. And just like that, everything changed. A week later, Olivia packed up her apron for the last time. She wasn't sure what awaited her in this new role, but she knew one thing. She would no longer be invisible. She had been noticed. And now, she had a chance to prove that. She was meant for something more.